Well, good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon. I stand corrected. Happy Easter. We're so glad that you're with us. And if you're our guest this weekend, we're thrilled that you can join us on Resurrection Weekend. My name is Adam Demetrician, and it's our privilege to serve you. Now, wasn't that fantastic, by the way? Just incredible. Yeah, can we thank the team? Yeah, it's pretty amazing to me to see something so dramatic tell the full story of God in such a compelling way. Now, my job in the next few moments is to zero in on Easter morning, talking about resurrection. And over here, there's a pretty large stone, wouldn't you agree? Biblical archaeologists tell us that this was an actual size of a burial stone in the first century, about 4 to 6 feet in diameter and about 5 feet tall. Maybe you ask, what does this have to do with Easter? Well, my point is that a burial stone like this would have covered the entrance to Jesus' tomb. Now, today, we don't have burial stones, we have headstones. And this week I was looking online, and I must admit that people have some pretty unique tastes when it comes to their headstones. I saw some like a life-size shark coming out of the water, like in Jaws, and a guy's name in the middle of the mouth of the shark. It was his birth year and his death year. I saw, like for headstones in cemeteries, like full-blown drum kits and motorcycles and cars. But my favorite was a cell phone. Remember those old Blackberries? Remember those Blackberries with the keypad? And this guy's mugshot in the middle of the screen. I mean, it takes all kinds of people. I think if you searched long enough, you could have found a cheese head for a headstone. Some guy just woke up in the back there. He said, "Oh, cheese head." No, I didn't say that Jesus had a cheese head on his burial stone, but you could. My point is that there's not a lot of hope in this world when it comes to death. Maybe a little, but not much. A unique headstone or something. But Easter is all about hope. Easter is the unexpected miracle where God infuses hope into our human heart. And so the question for us today is, how's our hope? Perhaps if you're low on your hope, then after we look at the resurrection story, you'll rise in terms of where you are with God and your hope that's found in your own heart. Let me read to you from my Bible the resurrection story found in the Gospel of Mark. Mark chapter 16, it's where we read these words. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go and anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, "Who will roll away the stone from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene who was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you." Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and they fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. These women had come to the tomb to prepare Jesus' body for permanent burial. Now, as customary, when a person would die in first century Jerusalem, what would take place was, first of all, the body was washed, and then it was wrapped in linen, and then oils were placed over the body. It was laid in a tomb that was about 6 feet in depth, and there were 2 rooms. The first was a temporary place where the body was laid, and for the course of 2 to 3 days, then loved ones would come back and they would anoint the body with spices. They would wait for 12 months so that the body would decompose, and then they would take the bones and put the bones into a bone box, often referred to as an ossuary. They would take that ossuary, and then they would take that into the inner chamber where they would finally lay the body to rest. Scripture says that the Sabbath was over, and the shops were open, and the spices were purchased, and all these 3 women wanted to do was only to be of service, to apply the ointment to the wounds after the damage of violence had been done to Jesus' body. They had come thinking that their leader had died for a good cause, that he was a good man, a great teacher, a charismatic figure. And like those who had gone before him to deliver hope to those who were poor and despairing, he was crushed by the wheel of Roman power. The question on their lips that morning as they came to the entrance of the tomb was nothing profoundly theological. It wasn't about the meaning of Jesus' life, nor was it about their ability to carry out his mission. The question on their lips was far more practical. Look at the text in verse 3. They ask this: who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb? All the women wanted to do that morning was to go and to anoint the body of Jesus. And yet there was a very large stone at the entrance of his tomb. Now, oftentimes in pop culture, especially Christian pop culture, we think of Jesus' burial stone, the blocking stone, being in a disc-shaped form. But in actual reality, what is more accurate is that the stone for Jesus would have been cork-shaped. In fact, out of the 1,000 or so burial stones that were examined by a biblical archaeologist, a guy by the name of Amos Kloner, only 4 of them were found to be disc-shaped. The other designs were cork-shaped. Those disc-shaped stones were outfitted for some of the wealthiest, for royalty of that time. In fact, those 4 were found at the tombs of the kings, reserved for Herod and his family. And since Jesus was an ordinary man, since Jesus wasn't a wealthy man, since Jesus' tomb was borrowed, it was an unused tomb from Joseph of Arimathea, it is highly unlikely that his blocking stone was disc-shaped. Now, why do I tell you this? I tell you this because the design of a cork shape, that rolling stone, was actually a rolling stone that was hard to roll. They tell us that a stone like this would have been 1 to 2 tons. That's over 2,200 pounds. And if the 3 women who showed on Easter morning were even to try to roll the stone, it would have been impossible. Not to mention the fact that Rome had posted guards at Jesus' burial entrance, and there was a seal over the tomb. And if that seal was tampered with in any way, shape, or form, the person touching the tomb of Jesus would have been immediately executed. And so what I believe, the question that the women asked on resurrection morning, who will roll away the stone to the entrance of the tomb, is our question. It's the question that we asked on this Easter morning when we walked to church. Who will roll away the stone? Who will roll away the stone of sorrow from the dark tomb of our losses? Who will roll away the stone of bitterness from the dark tomb of our failures? Who will roll away the stone of cynicism from the dark tomb of the tainted vision of the world that we live in? Who will roll away the stone of indifference from the dark tomb of the world's sufferings? Who will roll away the stone of grief from our broken relationships in our broken world? You know, when we entered Pathways Church this morning, we're still part of a Good Friday world. A world where terrorists have absolutely no regret for the massive loss of life, where military leaders argue over strategies of war, where racial tensions are at a tipping point, where refugees are being displaced at such an alarming rate. We're still part of a Good Friday world where our own lives, where we know the heartache of death, the agony of failure, the misery of broken spirits, and the shame, all the shame. We know the shame of our own worst capacities. What is your stone? What stone guards the entrance of your own soul? Is it the stone of financial crisis? Is it the stone of an unbearable relationship that you're trying to manage? Maybe it's a medical report. It's terminal, cancerous, untreatable. Maybe you received news in last month that is so agonizing, so anguishing to you that it rests at the entrance of your own soul. What is your stone? We come asking the question today, how can we open the large dark tombs of our lives that hold all the sorrow and anxiety and brokenness and loss? We ask, how can we open the large dark tombs of the world that hold humanity's lowest and most cruel acts? Who among us doesn't know the heavy stone that seals in the anguish of our lives? So like those women on resurrection morning, the question that is on our lips is, who will roll away the stone? And yet if we ask that question, beneath that question, I believe, is also our desire to trust. It's a glimmer of hope. It's the reality that there's an Easter morning resurrection power that can roll away the darkest and the heaviest stone in front of our lives. It's the reality that there is a God who is out there that can empty the darkest tomb and let in the light. When the women arrived at the tomb of Jesus, their leader, that particular morning, let's see what they experienced. Back to the text one last time. Verse 4 says this: "But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away." Did you notice that they didn't have to do anything? All they did was have to show up. God had already moved. He had already rolled back the stone. You know what that tells me? It tells me that our attempt to move our immovable stone is done out of our own strength. It's based upon what we can do. Every other world religion originates, and its premise is based on, what can I do? How can I measure up? How can I earn favor? It's based on what I can do. But biblical Christianity differentiates itself in this. It's what God has already done. It's what God has done in His Son, Jesus Christ. It's what God has done in knowing that there is a power that is greater than our sin and our death and our darkness. It's a God who says, I am for you, I am with you, I am in those moments that can bring hope and resurrection to your life. Friends, believe the gospel, the good news of God, that God still moves stones, that love is stronger than hate, that forgiveness is deeper than sin, that the truth of God is more powerful than the lies of the world, that death does not have the last word. Are you ready to show up? Are you ready to witness the power of God, that He can roll back the stones that guard the deepest hurts of your life? You know, as I was thinking about how to conclude my Easter message, I came across a poem that I think summarizes what I've tried to communicate to you in our time together. The title of the poem is "Nothing Can Save Us." It goes like this: nothing can save us. If there were something natural, reasonable, logical, to heal our broken hearts and to restore our broken world, we would have found it. But it wasn't possible. It took an impossibility to do that. An impossibly incredible event that breaks into our everyday life and breaks through our best attempts at self-sovereignty, our aspirations for truth that makes sense, truth that stakes its claim. Nothing can save us. Nothing can roll away the stone. Nothing can bring light into darkness and life into death. Nothing possible can save us. So something impossible had to happen. And just like the angel said to those three women on Easter morning, so I say to you, Jesus Christ, Jesus, the one crucified, the Nazarene, He is risen. He is not here.